Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. And if you're watching out on the Zoom room in our WNSTV channel on YouTube, when I have Camden Yards behind me, it usually means we're in for a baseball segment. We haven't had a whole lot of those in recent years and times, certainly not when we're talking about pennant races and such. But when Adley Rutschman was drafted out of this guy's area out there in the Pacific Northwest, I thought, well, we'll reach to the writer of writings and longtime contributor here at WNST and longtime contributor to ESPN, amongst a bunch of other places. He is a baseball historian and a commissioner of the West Coast League as well out there in Portland, Oregon. We welcome Rob Neyer back onto the program. What's going on, Rob? How are you, man? First time Zoom. It's good to see the bookshelf behind you. I mean, you don't just write books, you read them. That's good to see.
I read a few, yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Adley Rutschman because he's actually a graduate of the West Coast League, as you know.
Well, yeah, we talked about that the last time, and I
Yep.
think time goes through these strange transitions of whatever the 60-game Eddie Feigner thing was last year. As I speak to you today, the Orioles in the last 24 hours have played 2 7-inning games as part of a doubleheader. So, I don't know whether I'm coming or going. Guys are on second base in the 10th inning or the 8th inning, depending on when you're watching. I don't know where to start, but it is baseball season. I guess it's good to have 162 back, right? We may have talked one time during the pandemic last year, but the pandemic has wreaked havoc on all aspects of our lives. But the baseball industry, and for West Coast leagues and minor leagues, there are no more Frederick Keys. Aberdeen's playing high A. All of these changes all coming at one time, literally right now, if you've been under a rock.
It is a pretty amazing transformation, so much change, and part of it I think is because of the pandemic. Part of it is were things that baseball wanted to do anyway, and just now has an excuse. It is hard to keep track. I mean, the one thing that sort of, for me, the through line is that I still turn on my phone every night and listen to baseball games, right? And I almost can't process everything else. I mean, and in part because I don't have to. When I was writing a column or blogging every day at ESPN.com or Fox Sports or SB Nation, all those places, I had to be writing about and analyzing everything that happened every day. And honestly, I mean, it's a great time to be a baseball writer. But
Well, because there's so much happening, right? And so much that guys like you and I who are smart guys are trying to figure out, figure out. And 100,000 feet, Rob, I've asked this question. I've asked this about the Orioles. What are they trying to do? What are they doing with 7-inning games and guys on second base in the 10th? Like, who's making this stuff up, and who is it appealing to, and who's checking off on all of it?
Well, those are all great questions. I mean, right now I'm working on a book with an umpire named Dale Scott, who you might remember. He was in the American League and then the Major League, on the Major League staff for 30 years, more than 30 years. And when Dale got into baseball in the early 80s, you could almost count the number of people in the Major League front office or the American League front office on one or two hands, right? You look at their masthead now, it is a list of hundreds. And so who makes the decision? Well, nobody really. I'm sure you have meeting rooms full of people who bandy these things about. I'll give you a great example of what you were talking about before. We just learned that the Atlantic League, which is an independent professional league and has been a test bed for Major League Baseball for a few years, which I think is a great idea, by the way, they are going to experiment. And they tried to do this 2 years ago. It didn't happen. They're going to experiment this year in the second half of the season. They're going to move the mound back 1 foot. Well, that's a momentous difference, a monumental change. Where did the idea come from? Who knows, right? Who approved it? Who knows? There's no
Is
transparency.
this like in football with kickoffs? I mean, are they worried about line drives? I mean,
No,
I see the bat speed, 119 mile an hour line drives coming back at pitchers, and I remember when Messina went down in a heap here a generation ago, and Canigliaro, and we were telling a story of Ray Chapman this week. I had the Believe Land movie producer on doing a piece on the only player to get beaten. The player safety would be. Why are they moving it back a foot?
so the safety of the pitchers is a minor consideration at best. I think it's great if it does help, but the rationale for doing it, the stated rationale is to cut down on the strikeouts, more balls in play, more action on the field. Now, the problem is, and this could be said of many of the things that baseball is trying in the minor leagues and in the Atlantic League, yes, but also other minor leagues. Most of us, I think, would agree that having more balls in play is a good idea, which is to say fewer strikeouts, for sure, maybe fewer home
So
runs.
you would say that most of us would agree with that, but if you're an analytics person dissecting the sport to try to beat the other guy,
Right.
they wouldn't agree with that.
Absolutely. And that's why you can't let the analytics people run the game, right? And I wouldn't say the analytics people have been running the game, but they've been allowed to run unchecked, which is to say that 50 years ago, Nestor, if you had an imbalance like we're seeing now with the strikeouts and the home runs.
Well, you had dead ball 68 the year I was born, right?
Exactly. What do? They lower the mound, right? And the strike zone has been changed many times over the years. The baseball has been changed many times over the years. And it was always done, or almost always, to bring some balance, and by extension, to get more fans into the stands, okay, to improve TV ratings, whatever it might be.
Well, there are a lot of things that did that. I had Dave Parker on this week talking about, the 79 Pirates. And then after that, there were steroids. And then A-Rod's era and Bonds in between that. And chicks dig the long ball.
Right.
Rob, I love baseball. I've loved it my whole life. I barely recognize it. And it's on every day. And here, I can't stop discussing 2 weeks into this, they've changed the broadcast, right? So there's new announcers. Rick Dempsey's gone. Mike Bordick. I mean, just in Baltimore, the game now they're giving us 7-inning games, runner on second, 8th inning's an extra inning on the other night. They're not letting you take food in. There's some certain things like that, along with social distancing and all that. You know that they're nuts, right? And they don't stream the games, right? So there's no in-market streaming, and the fans are insane here because in places like where you are, you stream a Mariners game, no problem in Portland. We can't do that here. This organization's a mess in that they're not trying to win. So it's almost like you can't talk about it on any given night because they're really not trying to win. They're trying to lose and get a higher draft pick while they go through all of this. But the sport itself, when I see players aligned, I see guys that can't hit the other way. I see the stationary style of baseball. I see what you see. 10 pitches in an at bat and the guy still strikes out. And the game's 4-hour games. All of these
and also
issues.
25 seconds between pitches, right?
Is your league on a pitch clock?
Of course they should. I mean,
is your league though on a pitch clock?
Oh no, we don't have a pitch clock, but we don't need one because pitchers don't do that. Pitchers are taught to do that in the minor league as professionals, and then when they reach the majors in particular. There's a much quicker pace in the minors, especially below AAA. But the closer they get to the majors, the more they're encouraged, whether explicitly or implicitly, to basically rest between pitches. Look, there's no doubt about it. The science is clear. The longer you wait before your next pitch, the harder you can throw. So why wouldn't you wait, right? Now, when we were young, the mantra was always work fast, right? Work fast, throw strikes. There was an idea out there that if you work faster, you would get into a better rhythm, have better control, etc. there wasn't any science behind it, just something people said. And it might have been true to an
Ray
extent.
Miller had that. Work fast, throw
Absolutely.
strikes, change speeds.
Right. He had it on t-shirts. And that's what everyone said. Don't, if you're slow, you'll get out of a rhythm. Your fielders will be up back on their heels. Well, that's all out the window now. Now with most pitchers, the idea is I'll take 20 seconds and I'll recuperate. Right. And I'll throw an extra mile or two faster on my fastball or whatever. So yeah, we need a pitch clock. There's no reason not to have one, except that the pitchers push back. And but ultimately, if you want a quicker, more entertaining game, not shorter game times, that's not the issue. The issue is the pace. And you and I have discussed this. You can't address that without cutting the average time between pitches down from 20 some seconds to 15.
Shortening the game should not be 7 innings, bro. I mean, like, I don't know who in the F came up with that. Like, I literally, I watched it for the first time in my life on Tuesday. Monday night, they washed the game out at 9 o'clock after everybody sat around. They thought they were going to play. You follow the Mariners or no? You're just more. The Mariners are your team, right?
I do. I follow them. Yeah.
So you're keenly aware of what happened here this week, right?
Right.
But I guess it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The game started for you on Tuesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching the game, and it's the 5th inning, and I'm realizing it's a 7th inning game, and I'm thinking, how the hell would you manage this? And then they wind up playing an 8th inning and putting the guy on second base that just made the out. We didn't come up with stuff this esoteric. It robbed the Billius' backyard. We played wiffle ball.
Well, the reason you see things like that is because 3 or 4 years ago, the people who run baseball acknowledged, at least internally, that we have a problem here. This is not the best baseball that can exist. And the people there are smart enough to know what they needed to do, that they needed to change the pitcher batter dynamic somehow so that we would have fewer home runs and fewer strikeouts and more balls in play so we could see, whoever. As I've said many times, Ozzie Smith today wouldn't be Ozzie Smith. He wouldn't make as many plays because there'd be so many more strikeouts, right? We want those guys back, but you can't get them back without fundamentally changing the pitcher batter dynamic. And that's really hard. It's hard to get done. It's hard to get approved by all the teams. It's hard to get approved by the union. So what they've done instead is tinker around with all these other little things, hoping that if we do all these little things, maybe that'll create some impetus for change. Maybe we'll make the game a little bit quicker here, a little bit quicker there. But ultimately, they're not going to get where they want to go unless they change that dynamic. And all the fooling around with the doubleheader innings and the runner on second in the 10th inning, it doesn't fundamentally change the equation.
Well, pitchers pitching the 3 batters, and that takes away specialties. The obvious thing they're doing with the starting pitching, which is we're not going to give pitchers $40 million anymore because we're not going to let them be good enough to warrant getting $40 million or out there long enough to look like Jim Palmer or Jack Morris or whatever. All of this is economic, right? I mean, they've killed these minor league teams now. I mean, we're such an outlier as a franchise in finally having a Latin base, like 40 years too late for the Orioles. And I know this ownership isn't, I guess, long for here. I mean, the whole Nashville thing always sits out there. You're in Portland, you want a franchise, right? But Nashville worries all of us here. We have 2 years left here now. They gave us a 2-year extension. This is the last year of the original lease. And I've been talking about this for years, but there's a part of it for me living here and having experienced it all, that the whole thing, not just John Angelos or the Orioles or Camden Yards or anything, they need to be an it thing. And I don't know if any of them know how to do it. And how to market Mike Trout when they have one, how to keep Manny Machado in Baltimore when they have one, how to have teams making the same amount of sort of kind of revenue so they have sort of kind of the same payroll. They're so far out of whack and have been forever that train, it's my 30th year on the radio, Rob. And I remember back in 93 and 94, The reason I know so much about this, like you being inside, is because I had to. I mean, there was a strike. We didn't have a football team. I knew everything. I read Lords of the Realm. I was in on all of the negotiations on a day-by-day basis as to who was doing what to whom and all of that. I don't think the community here cares so much if they walk out next year, which is like everything I hear is it's going to be, Messersmith, 50 years later, and Kurt Flood and all of that, that's where they want to take this thing. And I don't see a salesman anywhere in the room. You know what I mean? I don't see anybody saying, how are we going to make this sexy, fun, make people like it, make black people like it, make kids like it? Oh, I know. We'll put 2 teams in Florida. There's a lot of Hispanic folks there like Ness. Well, that's been 30 years now, right? And they didn't get that right. So I don't know what the plan is, but it doesn't feel like they have much of one. And I really wonder, does anybody go into the rarefied air there and tell them how bad it is, and tell them that there are lots of 50-year-old guys like me with a last name of Aparicio who don't go to baseball games, and I'm kind of waiting for them to want me back, because there's nothing there right now for me, and there's nothing there for most people in Baltimore, and I know that's different other places. But Rob, I had Dan Shaughnessy on last week at length. I had Bob Ryan on last week. They're telling me on certain mornings the Red Sox are number 4 in Boston on certain mornings. That should be frightening. That it should frighten everyone. It should frighten John Angelos that Bob Ryan and Dan Shaughnessy are saying things like that to a guy named Aparicio from Boston to Baltimore. That if it falls apart in these places, good luck in Tampa.
Well, I think that part of the reason that we don't seem to see any real dynamic call for real changes, positive changes, is, well, 2 reasons. One, the organization is so big. We have literally, when you include all the teams, thousands of people all fighting for a place at the table, all with different priorities. And the other thing is, last year notwithstanding, every year, regardless of the attendance or the TV ratings or whatever you want to look at, baseball's revenues go up every year by $1 billion or whatever. Roughly, they've been increasing by $1 billion a year for the last, I don't know how many years. So I think it's difficult for people who want to make a real difference to make the argument, we got to change because we have to change. Why? Well, because we want to we just increased from 12 to 13 billion last year. Do we really need to change that much? And when your decisions are driven by money, and you see that the revenues are going up every year by $1 billion, and that the franchise values are skyrocketing. You know what the Yankees are worth right now. You know what the Orioles would sell for today if they were on the market. They would sell for, I don't know what, 1.2 billion or something.
I thought it'd be more than that, but
more than
fair
that.
enough. Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, there was a point where you thought the television network was worth something, and that's what the Sinclair boys thought. And right. That hasn't gone well. So.
Right. It does seem that the TV money is going to go away. Yeah, it's been predicted for a few years now, but as
people need to watch it. People need to engage with it. People need to care about the game.
Right.
Not about Star Wars night, not about the trinket or the Buck Showalter garden gnome they're giving away. Rob, the last time I went, and I keep saying this, and I'm not being a dick. I mean, I'm just being honest. A year and a half ago, my wife and I, Fred Uhlman, was in town from the Padres, old buddy, left us a couple tickets, spent a couple innings. We went over to see the Padres play. And they're wearing the proper mustard, It was in July. It was Christmas in July night. And they had set up a Christmas garden out where all of the not the bobbleheads, the statues are. I call them bobbleheads because I have them in bobblehead form. There's Jim Palmer here. And they've got a snow machine on a 92-degree night, having snow go up and evaporate in the outfield. I'm thinking, who sits in this building in November and December and comes up with this stuff? I literally, I don't know. I mean, the bobbleheads and the trinkets and the nostalgia, and Brooks is over here and Eddie's over there, and great, great. But then it's how much is it to come out? Do I know the guys on the team? Am I engaged in the game? When you sit in the bowl of the stadium now, Rob, and I've done this because I'm disengaged from baseball. I went to 30 ballparks in 30 days. As you remember back in 15, I've been to a handful of games here and again. It hasn't struck me to go, and I live 2 blocks away. I live this close. And when I sit in the upper deck now and I just watch the game, not like paying attention to who's eating what or the vendor or the girls down here or the music or the friggin' crab races or the hot dog or all of this stuff that everybody's all jammed up about. The game itself, the game balls in play. When I see shifts and I see fundamentals and I see the ball never move, I keep saying to myself, they're talking about the curtains in a restaurant where the food's lousy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like literally, it's the food. It's the food's got to get better because you can give stuff away and you can have fireworks and you can get the kids out to run the bases. You can do all of that, and it's great. It's great. But people got to like fall in love with Adley Rutschman. They do.
Right. Right. No, and I agree with all of that. And I do think there is a growing consensus inside the game that they do need to make those fundamental changes. The trick is, how do you get it done? And do you do it? How quickly can you do it? I think they're on that path. I have no idea if it's a 2-year path or a 20-year path, because clearly the game, if you look at the trajectory of the game now in terms of attendance, TV ratings, and just quality of play, not how good the players are, but how good the game is.
How about age? How about just the age of the people watching it on any given night?
Well, I will push back a little bit on that. The age is high, no question. But the one thing that I will come back to is that people like us, people in the journalism world, have been predicting the demise of baseball and the loss of a younger generation literally for more than 50 years. I have articles right here in my room here from the 1960s where people were saying kids don't care about baseball anymore. Football and maybe basketball are going to take over the world. Now that might happen.
Well, it's hard to say it's diminished when they're 15% their revenues go up every year. So it's hard to say.
Well, what's happening is the revenue sources grow. It doesn't mean that fan interest necessarily grows. It just means that they can get more money for the the app on the phone or whatever it might be. In the 60s, teams were losing money, and there was a real business issue. Right now, the issue isn't so much business as it's a future issue. People in baseball are smart enough to say, I think, some of them anyway, yes, we're doing well now. The money continues to come in, but there are things happening, some systemic things in our game that will not support this growth forever. I think they are trying to address it. I just don't know if they can. They're trying. Will it work? I don't know.
Rob Neyer is here. He is the writer of writings and longtime baseball historian. Running the West Coast League. Hold your coffee mug up out there, Rob. You tell everybody what you do, man. I'm many things in life. I kid Don Moeller all the time when we have on various officials and leaders. I get all the alphabet soup mixed up, but I always say to be a chief. Like if you're a police chief or a fire chief, there are very few jobs where you can be chief. Very few jobs you get to be a commissioner. You know what I mean? Other than like your rotisserie league or fantasy league, right?
Yeah, I'm actually I mentioned to a few people who just happen to say, so, what do you do for a living, or what do you do? I'll mention I'm a commissioner, and I've had a few people think, oh, you're a commissioner of a fantasy league. That's cool. Well, I actually have been one of those at some point too, probably. But no, as you know, I'm the commissioner of the West Coast League. Here's the coolest part of the job, maybe, is that my name's on the baseball. That's quite
man,
the quite
I want
the perk.
one now. Oh man, I want to play catch.
Yeah, it's a kick to go play catch with a friend and use my own ball. So yeah, that's a kick. We are, for people who haven't heard of our league, I know everybody's heard of the Cape Cod League. We are essentially the the West Coast equivalent of the Cape Cod League. Their players are, I mean, the Cape League, as you know, is the cream of the crop when it comes to summer collegiate baseball. We
It's
are the
sort of a
best.
June through August thing, 60-day
That's
thing, kind
right.
of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Early June through mid August. Yep. And we have the best players west of the Mississippi, basically. Um, so yeah, it's a heck of a job. We didn't have a season last year because of the pandemic, but we're full speed ahead, at least down south of the border here, because we have some teams in Canada that are not going to play, unfortunately. But all of our U.S. teams are full speed ahead.
Give me a little Adley Rutschman thing because he's the only thing here that matters, and he's not here. Um, and it's weird with the minor leagues and them chasing off Frederick, and whether you go to Bowie and see him play, or whether it'll be Norfolk and Aberdeen before that, or wherever. But give me a little Adley Rutschman because you knew him as a kid, right?
I did not.
Oh, you did not. Okay.
I did not. I'm actually going to a University of Portland baseball game today. And I'm going with my friend Dan Siegel, who also runs the Corvallis Knights, and that's the
I've
team
had Dan
Adley
on the
played
program.
for.
Yes, thank
You
you.
had Dan on the show, yeah. And Dan has known Rush Adley for a long time. All I know is that speaking to Dan and others who were around when Adley was at Oregon State, that everybody just has nothing but the greatest things to say about him. I mean, I was thrilled when the Orioles drafted him. It was a great thing for our league having the number one pick be drafted out of our league. But I was also just pleased that he's going to be playing for. You're going to get a chance to enjoy him. My friend Sig Meidel works for the Orioles, and I'm pleased that he'll get to watch Adley play. So, and I'm looking forward to seeing him reach the majors. I would assume fairly soon.
Don't play blackjack with Sig. Whatever you do, man.
I wouldn't play anything with him.
Don't do that. Is that the Hank Aaron behind? That's not a Heartland. It looks a little more updated than a Heartland. That looks like a 1970s Hank. That looks like a 714 stroke there to me.
That is, and it is the Todd McFarlane, the comic book artist, has a whole line of toys.
That's right.
And that's a McFarlane. I've got a McFarlane Willie. They're incredible. I've got a McFarlane Willie Mays. There's a Mantle and a Mike Sweeney over there. I got a bunch of McFarlanes. I do have Heartlands. They're in the house in their own special case.
Who is your player? Like I've been geeking out with 70 stuff. I had Dave Parker on the show. He's got a book out. You can go check that out at Baltimore Positive as well. And, I had to think about Dave Parker. Like, I love Dave Parker as a player because he was left-handed. I didn't love him in 79 beating the Orioles, but like, I always think about this because I'm a kid of the 70s. I'm a This Week in Baseball and a baseball bunch kid, right? A Bad News Bears kid. I was born in 68, right? So everything special in my life that happened between 74 and let's say 84 was baseball related. I mean, the Colts left town, but baseball. My last name's Aparicio. It's baseball, right? All of those years and those players will always be special. And I had Mark Miller from Blondell Miller Schuler and DamnGoodLawyer.com on this week, and we got going on baseball cards.
Mm-hmm.
I was the original baseball card collector in my neighborhood. I was the one who had a big file cabinet. I had cards from the 60s and 70s. I had a 55 Aaron, a 55 Clemente. I had a 54 Aaron that was perforated. I had all the Aparicios. I was always trying to get the Kellogg, without the crack in it in 71.
Mm-hmm.
So I got high number cards, the 70 bench, all of it. 52 Mantle sold for $100 once at one of our shows at the Holiday Inn here with Jay's Nostalgia World and Baseball Card Shop. Jay Finglass, 1981. I was 12 years old. And those players in the 70s, man, like there's Brett, there's, Schmidt for me. There's Sixto Lescano, not in the same class, but he was my guy. And, Lowenstein and Renicky were always my favorites as an Oriole fan. But who was your guy? Like, because you didn't grow up normal like I did, being able to take the 22 bus after Memorial Stadium and at least see half the league. I mean, it was always weird to see Pete Rose or Steve Carlton or Garvey or any of the guys that played in the National League because you only got to watch them on Saturday afternoons when Joe Garagiola was at Busch Stadium or something.
Well, I didn't have a team when I was a little kid. We lived in the upper Midwest, and for some reason I adopted the Vikings and became a huge Vikings fan, but I never got into the Twins, except I loved Rod Crew because he was a superstar, right? So it was very easy to love him. And then when I was just turning 10, and you and I are almost the same age, so we sort of have the same sorts of memories about 70s baseball. When I was just turning 10, we moved to Kansas City. And the
That's a
Royals
real
were,
baseball town there now. You move right into the heart of it.
yeah, and the Royals, at that point, the Chiefs were terrible. And nobody cared about the Kansas City Kings. The Royals were everything. Everybody loved the Royals. And I just immediately fell into being a religious Royals fan in 76, which was their first division title season. So we all had Royals fever. I
Did
loved
you
all of
cry
them.
more or less than Freddie Patek?
It was what?
Did you cry more or less than Freddie Patek?
Oh, I cried more. I was at the game.
Oh,
I was at the game. This is game 5 in 1977. I cried in 76 watching on TV when Chris Chambliss hit the home run to beat the Royals. I cried in 77 at the ballpark when I believe Freddie hit into the double play to end the game, right?
this was the time in life where I started to hate the Yankees more than the A's.
Yeah.
Because I grew up with, really like 73, 74. My dad took me out there, the Vita Blue, Catfish, the whole deal, right? I hated the A's, man. And then Reggie came here for 5 minutes and didn't want to be here. Made me hate the Yankees, right? So at least I got on the right side of that battle, that 76, 77.
Yeah, between being beat by the Yankees and people in Kansas City having that sort of, there was all this. Kansas City had a reputation then. I don't know if they still do, of being sort of a cow town, right? Backwater, Midwest
I guess it was
backwater.
a place to get a steak and get the hell out. Yeah, it was portrayed as
That's
such.
That's how it was portrayed. And to me, it was like, for all of us then, we all were offended by that. So between getting beat by them and just the fact they were in New York, we despised the Yankees. I couldn't imagine liking any player on the Yankees, no matter how good they were at that point. And I hated the Yankees until 1980 when the Royals finally beat them in the playoffs. But my favorite players were, I loved all of them. I can still name every player in the lineup for that 4 or 5 year period. I loved, you had to love George Brett because he was George Brett. But I mean, I loved Frank White and Amos Otis and Hal McRae and Al Cowens and Darryl Porter and all the rest of those guys almost as much as Brett. They were all gods to me.
Brian McRae comes on all the time. He and I are like friends in the real world and are the same age as well. And I love that time in life. And, for my dad and I, we would always, my dad would say, let's go see Splittorff pitch. You know what I mean? Like, or, whatever the match, Splittorff's pitch against Flanagan tonight. Let's go out, or whatever. And I miss that. And I know it's not coming back, but I am 52 and I got, time, money, summers. I want this team and this sport to bring me back. And
right.
I don't mean it needs to be my way or on my terms, or pitcher needs to hit or designated hitter, or you need to do it at my price point. You need to make it worth my time.
Well, let me ask you this.
Make it something that me and my family want to do every night in our living room that we always did. And now question, like, why is this on? Why am I not watching Chopped tonight?
Let me ask you this. If the Orioles do in the next 2 or 3 years what the Cubs did and what the Astros did, does that bring you back?
I feel different. I mean, you're asking, I mean, I had my license to practice taken away 15 years ago. So I have a different vibe on all of that, but I would say I want them to recruit the community back. I want them to have me in a place in my life where I have to go because everybody's going and it's the thing to do. And I'm a historian that's forgotten more about it than almost anybody and dedicated literally my entire life to it, to promoting baseball, promoting sports. It's all I've ever done. That at some point, all of my 50-year-old friends like you, Rob, you're a baseball guy. If you came to Baltimore tonight, and I know they're playing the Mariners, so it's bad. You would be going to the game. It's what you do. But if you came here, it wouldn't be the first thing anybody would take you to do. There'd be 100 other things they would say. Are you interested in the Civil War? You like a good crab cake? Do you want to take a ride out on the boat? Do you want to go for a nice walk in the park? There's just a million things. Do you want to see Edgar Allan Poe's grave? I mean, a million things to see here, and they need to make it what it once was and what it always, it was a family treasure for us. And Rob, they didn't put their spring training games on the television network they were gifted. They didn't show spring training games. Like they're not trying to promote their players. That's the time when Adley Rutschman's playing. That's
Right.
when you get me excited about like coming, right?
Right.
Well, I hope are you going up to Seattle? Are you going to go to a game or two this year or no?
Oh, sure. I don't know. I haven't made plans yet, but I'll be at the ballpark up there multiple times, I'm sure. Yep.
Well, hey man, if I get to Seattle, I'll go to a game with you in Seattle anytime, man.
Fantastic.
Hey, take care of yourself out there. Podcast available everywhere, right?
Every outlet, every Monday morning, Sabercast with Rob Neyer. I get to talk to amazing people.
You got to talk to Luke. Luke's the Saber guy in the relationship. He's trying to teach me. I'm an old guy. I feel I need somebody like you to teach me. I need to feel comfortable with launch angle and all of that stuff. I'm trying.
Me too. I mean, I used to be up here, like, fairly close to the leading edge, and now I'm way back here behind, and I don't think I'll
behind
get
the
caught
pack.
up.
Well, we're getting older. Rob Neyer, writer of writings out in Portland, Oregon. One of our favorites to have on to talk baseball and baseball history. Take care of that Hank Aaron bobblehead behind you. I love
Will
it.
do. Great to see you, buddy. Take care.
Hey, man, got his name on a baseball. The commissioner, Rob Neyer. I'm sorry. At least during your, Mueller has me say that to everybody who's an elected official. We had Michael Steele on last week. I call him Mike. He's like, call him Lieutenant Governor. He was the Lieutenant Governor. You have to call him Lieutenant Governor. So you're commissioner for life, Rob Neyer. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.